Economists figure employers added a solid 325,000 jobs last month, down from 428,000 in both March and April. May's job numbers come out Friday morning. The White House is answering questions about the response to the baby formula shortage.
Reporters pressed White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre for a timeline about when President Biden was made aware of shortages of infant formula.
I don't have a date to share with you. What I can tell you is he spoke to this yesterday, and he said it was in April.
Jean-Pierre says federal agencies started working on formula supplies the day after an Abbott nutrition plant was closed in February.
That is how we run the White House. That's how any White House is run. So there are regular channels of White House senior staff, and that's how it gets elevated.
President Biden has invoked the Defense Production Act, and the FDA has eased restrictions for flights of formula to arrive from overseas. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
And a college wrestler in Kentucky died from heat stroke after his coaches reportedly refused his desperate request for water during practice. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh does it again, bringing back a classic fan favorite on the menu. The roast beef returns. And not just any roast beef, it's choice Angus roast beef, flavorful and satisfying on its own, or layered with oven-roasted turkey and Black Forest ham in the Subway Club. Whether you're a choice Angus roast beef purist or like the variety of the Subway Club, both come piled high on hearty multi-grain bread with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Get your fill of the new roast beef at Subway. Eat fresh.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So here we are on Friday, our least favorite day of the week. Suffering begins in a little less than 2 hours. An enforced absence from the airwaves until 4 o'clock Monday afternoon. But we got to make the best of the 2 hours that we got right now, Jose.
We do.
So I got a couple of articles here dealing with Second Amendment and firearms, et cetera. Starting out with a column that ran in a publication called Liberty Sword. And I put it on the card as Democrats versus Gun Safety. And the title of the article, Democrats Undermine Gun Control in the Black Lives Matter Riots of 2020. The spectacle of mobs rampaging through America's cities while police were demonized and told to stand down convinced millions of ordinary people that unless they owned a firearm, they would not be able to defend their businesses and families. Moreover, many Democrats back calls to cut funding to police or to abolish them entirely. The pushback from moderate Democrats was weak, as cities like Los Angeles cut $150 million, more than 10% of the police budget, and crime surged. In addition, Democrats and the media demonized ordinary citizens who dared defend themselves. When teenager Kyle Rittenhouse used an AR-15 style rifle to protect himself against a mob of rioters in Kenosha, then candidate Joe Biden smeared him as a white supremacist. A false claim that President Biden was unwilling to retract when it was taken apart during Rittenhouse's trial last year, when he was acquitted of killing 2 rioters and injuring a third during the melee. That does not mean nothing will pass Congress. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has urged his caucus to consider a bipartisan compromise. There's broad public support for, quote, red flag laws, which allow law enforcement to confiscate temporarily the weapons of an individual who is identified as a potential threat to themselves or to other people. I don't know that I get on the right side of this, with all the rhetoric coming from the left that speech is violence, and that people who say unpopular things are obviously committing violence in public and should not be allowed to have guns or knives or pliers or monkey wrenches or hammers. Yeah, I have a hard time getting on the right side of this red flag idea. Republican governed Florida passed a law in the wake of the Parkland High School shooting in 2018, and it has been used thousands of times since then. But broader changes will be impossible. Voters will not soon forget the riots of 2020. And that's for darn sure. If I lived in Portland or Chicago, you know, I would not have an AR-15 style rifle. I'd have a half dozen of them. Yeah. Okay, and then here's another article that ran in Town Hall. I call it Jones versus Guns. Democrat congressman warns America, we will stop at nothing until we confiscate your guns. Congressman Mondaire Jones, a Democrat from New York, warned law-abiding gun owners that Democrats will do everything in their power to ensure AR-15s and similar types of firearms are confiscated during a House Judiciary Committee hearing on Thursday. The hearing was to consider H.R. 7910, the, quote, Protecting Our Kids Act, which would raise the legal age to purchase certain semi-automatic center-fire rifles or semi-automatic center-fire shotguns. I didn't know there was such a thing as a rim-fire shotgun. Did you, Jose?
Rim?
A rim-fire shotgun?
No, that's new. So it's a circle that shoots out.
Yeah, yeah. The bill would also modernize a prohibition on untraceable firearms and encourage the safe storage of firearms. Jones said Congress will pass gun control legislation and nothing, not the filibuster in the Senate or the Supreme Court, will stop them. Enough is enough. Enough of you telling us that school shootings are effective life when every other country like ours is virtually ended. Enough of you blaming mental illness and then defunding mental health care in this country. This is Jones again. Enough of your thoughts and prayers. Enough, enough. You will not stop us from advancing the, quote, Protect Our Kids Act today, Jones said. You will not stop us from passing it in the House next week. You will not stop us. If the filibuster obstructs it, we will abolish it. If the Supreme Court objects, we will expand it. We will not rest until we have taken the weapons of war out of circulation in our communities. The gun control bill being considered by the House is in response to the mass shooting at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, where a teenager who was known to local police killed 19 children and 2 teachers during an hour-long attack. So this guy Jones made this speech on the floor of the House. And I guess the House is not as refined as Tall Tales because they apparently don't have a rule against soapboxing, which is exactly what this guy was doing, right? Okay, let's head now to Zemi Ikotny. The Daily News, our view, opportunities abound to make a difference. Apply for a GETA QC grant today. More than $15 million in grants from the Economic Development Authority has reached dozens of community-focused projects and programs that have directly benefited our villages, businesses, sustainability initiatives, and schools. Thanks to GETA's Qualifying Certificate Community Contribution Program, local nonprofits focused on initiatives and projects in healthcare, public safety, economic development, higher education, and culture preservation have a chance to apply for up to $25,000 in grant funding. According to news release from the governor's office, previous grants from the program made it possible for organizations like Gomami to purchase laptop computers that have helped those they serve better connect with their loved ones abroad. For more than 3 decades, Gomami has been providing housing and services for homeless citizens, at-risk individuals, and those with disabilities. GETA's grant program has also helped organizations like Breaking Wave Theater Company produce the series Unspoken, which focused on mental health and substance abuse issues. James Averman, treasurer of the theater company, stated in a news release that a program like GETA's QC grants has been a lifesaver. Beyond these organizations, GETA grant program has helped Inalahan Middle School, create a mural for its students and help revitalize the Talafofo Village basketball court. We urge everyone to look into GETA's QCC Series 6 grant opportunity. Money is available to help you and your nonprofit or organization make a difference. And making our community stronger, safer, and more stable and sustainable is as easy as sending in an online application. All those who wish to do good in our community should take advantage of every opportunity for support. The successful examples can be seen in our villages and schools. It's time to follow suit. Applications are being accepted until July 1. Establish your plan and make a difference and apply for a grant to achieve your goals. I don't like this. I've talked about it before. I still don't like it. And here's what we're talking about. The Guam Economic Development Authority has the ability to issue qualifying certificates to businesses. Now, the idea behind the qualifying certificate is to encourage businesses to locate here or to start here that wouldn't were it not for the qualifying certificate. The qualifying certificate is a tax dodge. It can, for a period as long as 20 years, forgive the company with the certificate of paying any tax at all, GRT, income tax, or property tax. So this idea came along in 1965 to encourage new business to Guam. The idea was we'll give new businesses a holiday, and companies that might not locate here would locate here because of the tax holiday. And at the end of the tax holiday, they'll be paying taxes like everybody else. And in the meantime, they'll be hiring people, creating wealth. And I think the GETA program is a good program. Now, one part of it that was added here in my recent memory was the requirement that companies that get these GETA programs contribute to this fund every year, the fund that's identified in the article, the Qualifying Certificate Community Contribution Program. So every company that gets a QC has to contribute to this fund to GETA, sometimes as much as the value of 10% of their tax holiday. Then the GETA Board of Directors gets to give it away. Yeah. So they can give it to charitable organizations with very, very little oversight, sketchy criterion. I don't like it at all. If we're going to have a tax holiday program, then let's forgive taxes. And if we're making the company pay in order to get the tax break, it is a poor design. You should get the tax break and not have to pay anything for it. And then we set GITA up to distribute money in a manner that should be distributed by the legislature. It's called the appropriation process.
And that sets up GITA to be a whole different kind of entity.
It does.
A grantee.
It does. It does. A grantor.
Grantor, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the people who are able to take advantage of this are that subspecies of Homo sapiens known as grant writers that exist in places with very little oxygen, water, sunlight, or anything else. They're just bent over their word processors, cranking out grants.
Well, you know, even appropriations have a hard time with accountability, because I know that the Tourism Attraction Fund goes out to other entities, and I don't think there's been any kind of oversight on any of those TFA grants given out.
That's very true. So if I had the ability, I would deep six this program and say, if you're going to be in the tax holiday business, give tax holidays. Don't make companies, in effect, come back and lessen the effect of the tax holiday because they got to pay money into the GITA till. Okay, so much for that. The Post doesn't have an editorial today, of course. They haven't had an editorial ever since. But I do have an article here that I plucked from the Daily News that I'm going to read into the editorial section. It's on one of the things that I like to zero in on from time to time, and that is the power of words, the ability of people who attempt to control the language that we use to control our thought processes.
Systemic racism.
Systemic racism. And this is an article by Catherine Jean Lopez. And I don't know much about Catherine Jean Lopez, but the title is The Shifting Language of Abortion. For about a half second after the leak of the Supreme Court draft opinion in the case that may throw out Roe versus Wade, people who support Roe dropped the talking points and told the truth. Talking points. If you listen to politicians on the air, most of their speech is composed of talking points. Things like lower taxes stimulate the economy. And then the Democrat will come along, yeah, but we have to fund the government. And they swap their talking points. If you listen to them long enough, you'll hear those talking points recycled over and over again. But Catherine says for about a half second after the leak in the Supreme Court draft opinion in the case that may throw out Roe versus Wade, people who support Roe dropped the talking points and told the truth. California Governor Gavin Newsom tweeted that if men could get pregnant, of course abortion would be legal. If men could get pregnant, of course, abortion would be legal. Joe Biden talked about the right to abort a child. The dropping of the filter was a refreshing reprieve from the typical euphemisms. For most of my adult life, we haven't heard the A word. I'm going to take a victory lap when I finish reading this. But Catherine says, for most of my life, we haven't heard the A word. The National Abortion Rights Action League became NARAL, N-A-R-A-L, an acronym. Pro-Choice America, NARAL Pro-Choice America when I was in my 20s. But that seems to be changing as of late. A makeshift sign protesting pro-life prayer vigil in Lower Manhattan Catholic Church recently asked us to stop harassing abortion patients. By harassing, they meant that once a month a group of us gathers for Mass at Old St. Patrick's Cathedral Basilica and then walks the almost block to Planned Parenthood to pray across the street. They call that harassment. We pray for the women and girls who find themselves there and for the conversion of those who work there. The dropping of the euphemistic veil didn't last all that long, however. According to Political, the pro-choice caucus in Congress sent House Democrats a brief list of abortion messaging do's and don'ts. The previously preferred word choice is now out of style in favor of decision. Are you pro-life or pro-decision?
Because they're clearly on opposite sides of the spectrum.
Of course. The pro-choice caucus wants to move beyond Bill Clinton's safe, legal, and rare to safe, legal, and accessible. That language change marks a hardening of ideology in the Democrat Party, if not in the country. Interestingly, the pro-choice caucus also wants to move away from the word unwanted pregnancy in regard to a woman seeking an abortion. Instead, it suggests the word unexpected. Is an unexpected pregnancy different from an unwanted pregnancy? No doubt that is to make sure that the girl or woman is seen with sympathy. But I see that word and want a woman faced with an, quote, unexpected pregnancy to know that she has options, that there is support out there for her and her child. Instead, too often all signs in her life point to an abortion clinic. The pro-choice, will they change to pro-decision, caucus also wants to sow hostility toward doctors who want to opt out of abortion and pharmacists who don't want to be part of providing abortion pills. Abortion in America is increasingly carried out by pills, sometimes pills delivered by mail. Anyone who does this is refusing or denying care, according to the new language, never mind claims of conscience rights. That is, any doctor who says, I don't want to do abortion, or any pharmacist who said, I'm not going to give you those abortion chemicals. Gone, or at least minimized, is the talk of back alley abortions and coat hangers, with the focus shifting to criminalizing health care. But we pro-life workers want to make sure that pregnant women have more, not less, health care, that they have all the information and support they need to become mothers, even if their pregnancy ends in adoption. The first Saturday after the Supreme Court leak, abortion enthusiasts, there's no other way to describe the people I saw and heard, abortion enthusiasts, blocked our way out of church with the typical obscenities and particularly grotesque displays. A performance artist simulated an abortion with dolls in front of the church, as an example. What I want to do is find common ground, focus on the welfare of the mother and the child. As much as I want everyone to protect the innocent unborn, how about making some small steps towards civility? Aren't you tired of the screaming and pouring of salt into open wounds, too? So the point here is that abortion is so morally repulsive that people don't want to talk about abortion. They want to use euphemisms, pro-choice, pro-choice, pro-decision, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to take my victory lap here, Jose. From the time the Tall Tales began, I discouraged terms pro-choice and pro-life. On Tall Tales, we talk in terms of pro-abortion and against abortion. As much as those who celebrate abortion don't like it, if you are able to control language, it's the first step in controlling the thought process. And there's no way to think about abortion except to think about the killing of a helpless, unborn human. And that's that's exactly what abortion is. So that was in place of the editorial that the Post doesn't write anymore. Okay, let's take a short break and then we'll move on to the calendar, to the card.
The 2022 GSPN Boys Volleyball All-Star Game presented by the Guam Army National Guard goes down Sunday, June 12th at the FD Phoenix Center. The best high school players from both the public and private schools will put their talents on display, coached by the champion coaches. Watch it live at the Phoenix Center or streaming on GuamSportsNetwork.com, powered by IT&E. The 2022 GSPN Boys Volleyball All-Star Game, June 12th.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here's the card for today. Of course, we start out with Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. I think everybody knows what I mean by that and why I mention it every day. And then we've got a couple of heavyweight bouts. We go back to Klitzkie versus Weir, but we've got a new iteration here, Pacific News Center versus the News, which is a takeoff on Klitzkie versus Weir. And then the second heavyweight bout is McNinch versus Mendiola. And then we've got the Governor versus Michael San Nicolas and non-Chamorros. A little identity politics, anyone? No. And we've got Michael Bavacqua versus the United Nations, the ACLU versus free speech, rulemaking versus the legislature versus the legislature's own standing rules, Carl versus the Visitors Bureau, AG versus GTA, racist versus Uvalde, Beto versus Robert, and France versus Russia. I know I'm not going to get through that through that card today, but I'll have something to start with on Monday, won't I? Okay, yesterday I spent a lot of time talking about the groups petitioning the Supreme Court to hear the insular cases. And I'm going to brand some people. I'm going to be not so kind here. There are some people who don't know what the hell they're doing. And it's bad enough they don't know what the hell they're doing to themselves, but they don't know what the hell they're doing to us. And they got caught up in this insular cases racism thing, the Tina Rose Munga Barnes phenomenon, where all you have to do is say that something is racist and you immediately generate support. If I were to tell you that the Lexus is a racist automobile, no one would buy Lexuses. You'd find Lexus parked all over the side of the road because nobody wants to be a racist. They wouldn't care why I said that. They wouldn't care what a Lexus is about, what it's like, any of the details at all. So all you have to do is say the insular cases are racist. Anybody want to have the insular cases overturned? I do, me. Yeah, call me in on that. I'm not a racist. I want to do that. And of course, the more fervent a person's desire to overturn the insular cases, the less time that person has actually spent reading any of the insular cases or any account of the insular cases. And I've been going through this ever since there's been a Tall Tales. 9 cases were decided on the same day at the beginning of in the year 1901. One of them was called Downs versus Bidwell. Mr. Downs was an importer. A guy named Bidwell was a collector of customs for New York. Downs wanted to import some bananas from Puerto Rico to New York. Bidwell says, okay, but according to the Foraker Act, which is the Organic Act for Puerto Rico, you got to pay a tariff on them bananas. Well, of course, Mr. Bidwell couldn't get into a 2-month-long argument and let the bananas all go rotten, so he paid it, and then he sued for a refund. And the Supreme Court, and he sued on the basis that that the Foraker Act, which is the Organic Act for Puerto Rico, had a provision that said imports of fruit from Puerto Rico to the mainland would pay duty at half the rate of such goods imported from a foreign country. So it was a reduced tariff, but it was a tariff anyhow. So Mr. Downs said, you can't do that because the uniformity clause of the Constitution says that Congress can enact tariffs, taxes, excises, etc., but they must be uniform throughout the states. Therefore, since that tariff wasn't uniform, it had to fall. And you can't charge tariffs on goods traveling inside the United States. Well, the Supreme Court said, for its own reasons, they said, no, Puerto Rico is not in the United States. It is appurtenant to the United States and a property of the United States, but it is not the United States. Therefore, the uniformity clauses don't apply. Sorry, Mr. Downs, the Foraker Act is constitutional. Your request for a refund of the tariff is denied.
Denied.
And that's why we keep paying so much attention to Downs versus Bidwell. That one ruling, that's the ruling that we're talking about here. So that ruling, if you expand it a little bit and think about it, means that the constitutional provisions did not, of their own force, ex proprio vigere, come to the islands conquered from Spain. And if you look at Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, which I do so often that I know it almost as well as the Second Amendment, but let me read it one more time. The Congress shall have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory of the United States. So since the uniformity clause didn't apply, it was up to the Congress. And the Congress said, this is how we're going to do it. And that's why we have all of the bennies we have right now. That's why we don't pay federal income tax, no uniformity clause applying to us. That's why we get the Section 30 money. That's why we don't have customs duties here on the island. That's why we can charge a tariff on goods coming from the United States. It's called a use tax. That's why the Interstate Commerce Clause doesn't apply here. It's the financial foundation of this territory. It is the by far the best thing that we've got going for us. And if Downs were overruled, it would all go away. You'd be filing your 1040 with the Internal Revenue Code. You'd pay your taxes to Washington. They wouldn't come back here. No Section 3. All the rest of that stuff would be gone. And then there's the whole racist thing. And I go through this all the time, but I find it necessary because a history professor at the University of Guam, if we get hung up on this racist thing, has to take her share of the blame. Ann Paris Hattori, a history professor at the University of Guam, was on John Oliver's Last Week Tonight show. You can still find it if you go if you Google it. This is what she said. The United States flag is flying over these lands, so some people said, well, doesn't that mean that American laws apply? In 1901, the Insular Cases, basically the judgment of the Supreme Court, the new territories were inhabited by alien, quote, alien races, and they may not be able to understand Anglo-Saxon laws, therefore the Constitution doesn't have to apply. This is sickening for a university professor to whisper this, but to go on national television like this, it shows she doesn't know anything at all about history or what historians do. Historians go to the original source document, not what everybody knows or what everybody says. So if there's a racist dimension to this thing, I'm going to assign a lot of the blame to Ann Paris Hattori. So when you scrape the paint and varnish off of it, the worst possible thing that could happen to this island would be for the Supreme Court to say, we're overruling Downs versus Bidwell. The Constitution of the United States applies in toto ex proprio vigere. Now, there are some useful idiots out there saying, well, then we get to vote, right? No, you wouldn't get to vote. We'd be in the same situation that Hawaii was before Hawaii became a state. All the taxes, tariffs, duties, all the disadvantages of statehood applied to Hawaii. None of the advantages. Political rights are a function of state citizenship. If you want to vote for president, you got to live in a state. So we keep doing this over and over again. Tina Rose Munga Barnes, and I'm going to read the names of the people that are on the wrong side of this who apparently haven't taken the time to find out what they're talking about. And one of them, unfortunately, is Carl Gutierrez. Former Lieutenant Governor Kaleo Moylan, former Supreme Court of Guam Chief Justice Benjamin Cruz, Delegate Mike San Nicolas, you ought to know better, Mike, than that, Mike, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munga Barnes. I can't say we expect them to know better. We desire them to know better. If you're going to hold high government positions, you need to know what it is that you're talking about before you go forward on something that could be, as I mentioned to Frenchie yesterday, if you could imagine Typhoon Pangsangwa times 10. That's what the overruling Downs would be for this island. It would be a terrible thing. And of course we've got Neil Weir, who's out there. Neil Weir, it was shown into the gymnasium, and asked if his bench was clearly visible to the nickel seats. Why is that, Neil? Well, if you're a showboat, if you're a basketball player, people have to be able to see you dribbling behind your back and doing all of these things that may cost you the game, but you sure look good while you're doing it. That's Neil Weir. So I thought I had gone through it again yesterday, and I know I'll have to go through it again. Then I look at last night's PNC News, and here we go again. And PNC News last night, 8 amicus briefs calling on Supreme Court to overrule insular cases. And then here's the first sentence of this news story. This tells you that those folks over there don't have any idea what they're doing. Here's what the sentence says. The Supreme Court faces the question of where insular cases stand as they consider whether the Financial Oversight and Management Board for Puerto Rico violates the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. Now, here's what that's about. Puerto Rico is insolvent. Debts far outweigh their assets, etc. If they were a company or a person, they'd probably petition the court for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But states and territories cannot declare bankruptcy. People can, companies can, cities, counties, school districts can. So what the United States did was they invented some sort of a quasi-bankruptcy for Puerto Rico, and they created this commission, the Financial Oversight Management Board for Puerto Rico. And there are several appointees on there, and it operates like a bankruptcy. They marshal the assets of Puerto Rico. They collect all the claims against the government, and they work out a plan that would allow Puerto Rico to continue to operate while it pays off those debts. The design of the Financial Oversight and Management Board for Puerto Rico allowed the President of the United States to appoint all of those board members. But the board members did not have to be confirmed by Congress. So once again, reading the title, Supreme Court faces the question of where the insular cases stand as they consider whether the Financial Oversight and Management Board for Puerto Rico violates the Appointments Clause of the Constitution. There is case law that anyone who exercises an executive function has to be appointed and confirmed by Congress, or his actions are void. So the plaintiffs in that case said what the Financial Oversight Board did is void because the appointees weren't confirmed by Congress. The Supreme Court got a hold of that and said, no, that's not right. Puerto Rico is not, appointments to that board are not like appointments to boards that function in the 50 states. Once again, the insular cases, et cetera. But this happened about a year ago. That's how come I happen to know about it. I followed it very closely when it came along, but that was a year ago. So what's it doing in this news story? I think I know. It's a copy and paste type operation. And then the next sentence says in quote, friends of the court have filed 8 amicus briefs calling on Supreme Court to overrule the insular cases. And then I go a little farther. Equally American founder Neil Weir gave an update to the case which calls on the Supreme Court to overrule the insular cases. This sounds an awful lot like the press release I got in the mail. And I mentioned to you before that I dinged Pacific News Center because I got an email from Neil Weir. They ran a story and it looked exactly like the email from Neil Weir. And I said, did the word plagiarize mean anything? No, it's the reason they're so similar is because we ran the press release. And of course we know that's what news outlets do. They take press releases and just copy them out and away we go. And it's so much easier than actually doing any real reporting. But that's what they did. And then it gets worse. The petition to overrule the insular cases follow the controversial Supreme Court 8-1 ruling against Vallejo Madero. Now here's the key word, barring citizens of U.S. territories from receiving federal benefits.
Wrong.
I wonder if Ann Parasatori works as a consultant for them because they got some of the words that they need to use, but they got them in the wrong order.
I'm gonna just say this is where is your shame? It's like there's no malo, there's no integrity. It's just like we'll print anything that's given to us.
Exactly. And even Weird didn't give them, even Weird wouldn't do this.
PNC would probably freak out if War of the Worlds was playing right now.
Yeah, they'd probably send a reporter out to cover that. Yeah, so I'll read it again. The 8-1 ruling in the Madero case barring citizens of U.S. territories from receiving federal benefits.
Wrong.
Not even close. And then a dash, and then along with a similar case against John Fetissimanu, which deemed that residents in the territories are not U.S. citizens.
That's just so. So PNC, who are your citizens of?
Yeah.
What country do they belong to?
Exactly. And yeah, and then the word deems. Never use the word deems when you're writing about legal matters unless you really know what the word means. But according to PNC, the Madero case held that citizens of the territories are not U.S. citizens, and that, residents of the territories are not U.S. citizens, and that citizens in the territories are barred from receiving federal benefits.
Don't tell the CNMI. Well, there's a name to this. They don't just put staff anymore.
Yeah. This is Devin Eligio. Devin Eligio wrote this. Yeah, Devin, I think they need to send you back down to AA ball. You can't hit Major League pitching.
T-ball.
Yeah, you cannot hit Major League pitching, kid. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's the first heavyweight battle on the card. But
should we trust anything else that comes out of there?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And we need to tie a string around our brains.
I mean, this is not just being arrogant towards it. This is like complete false information.
Absolutely. Completely false. And it's no wonder that, that people who should know better get fooled because they probably watch PNC too. Yeah, those insular cases, we should be able to get those federal benefits. And, we want to be citizens too. Except for Jesse. All right, the next heavyweight bout on the card here in this corner. And let's break for the seventh inning stretch and find out if there's a boxing ring put up onto the infield in Wrigley Field.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Yeah, I'm a little premature on Wrigley Field. I was just enhanced by the specter of a boxing ring being set up in Wrigley Field. I don't think they ever had boxing in Wrigley. They did in Yankee Stadium. That was quite frequent. Yeah.
Madison Square. Well, you know what? I think it's because you're reeling from the news that you're not a U.S. citizen.
Yeah,
you've been deemed.
That's probably it. Yeah. So in this corner, weighing in at 191 pounds in the black shorts, hailing from Manilo, Ron McNinch. And in this corner, wearing the white shorts, weighing in at 189 pounds, hailing from the village of Tamuning, Mark Mendiola. This is going to be an exciting bout, sports fans. Both fighters are undefeated. The rumor is that Mendiola has a really hard right cross that could lay McNinch out on the canvas in the first round if he's not careful. McNinch has made his bones as a boxer, as a counterpuncher. So the bell is ringing. It's time for the bout to start. Let's watch. Time is ticking in the search for the new Department of Education superintendent, and after a contentious debate and hurt feelings, that's boxing for you. If you're not careful, you climb into that ring, you might come out with hurt feelings. A search committee was appointed. Superintendent John Fernandez' last day in the position is July 15. But at the rate that the Guam Education Board is going, it could take months before someone fills the role he will leave behind. Guam Education Board Chairman Mark Mendiola made it clear the hiring of the next superintendent is urgent and that he and other board members' terms will end in September. Thank God for that. Unless they get reelected. Sorry, Mark. I don't think I'm going to be in your campaign. Mendiola asserted his authority to appoint a special committee to speed up the search. I checked the board policy, and he does have that authority. But concerns were raised that the move would bypass the open government law, which the board is bound to follow. I'll get to that in a minute, but we'll go through the juicy stuff first. Quote, if every time we meet on this search, we're going to have a 5-day public notice, we're going to have to announce it. Is that what you want? Mendiola asked GEB member Ron McNinch. This is what's called a rhetorical question. Also a leading question, right? Also an attempt to be insulting with a question. Quote, the timeline is going to be pushed back because of the open government law, and I don't want to be a party to a lawsuit saying we're violating the open government law every time we have to meet.
Isn't that the open government law?
Yeah. Well, here's free legal advice, Mark. If you don't want to be sued for violating the open government law, don't violate the open government law. Now, if I were going to send you an invoice for that, that's about $250 worth right there. McNinch in response said, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respectfully point out that if we appoint a baby board to do the screening, they are just as bound by the 5-day requirements of the open government law as the board proper. Although Mendiola contended that work sessions don't require the 5-day announcement, McNinch countered, this is an official functionary duty of the board. It's very different than a work session. The back and forth between the two continued as Mendiola asserted it was within his power. Oh, we have a sound effect for that? A chairman's power. That is what I had. It works, but it isn't what I had in mind.
It's just
maybe thunderclap or something like that. Yeah, well, something to think about, Jose. Mendiola asserted it was within his power as chairman to appoint members of the special committee. Quote, this is the power of the chairman. Look on my works, you mighty, and despair. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. This is the power of the chairman based on policy to appoint a special committee, and this is what I'm doing. I don't think you should call it a baby board. Well, I guess we could say Mendiola's pro-abortion, huh? Don't call it a baby board. Call it a life board, right?
It's more of a clump of cells.
Yeah. Call it a baby board because the people that I'm proposing to go into this committee are very professional and capable people, Mendiola said. I'm trying to streamline the process so we have a clear and concise way of approaching this. I'm concerned that if we prolong this any longer, politics and things will come through. Things. I just want to appoint the right people to the board to ensure we have good representation in the committee. The special committee would be charged with developing the timeline and the job announcement with board input, presenting the timeline to the board and screening applications that are received. The board assumes responsibility for interviews, negotiation, voting and selecting the superintendent. Quote, "It does not remove the board from making the final decision. It just narrows down the field to ensure that we get the best candidate with as much input from internal and external stakeholders." It's another dangerous word. When you hear the word stakeholders, put on your cautious glasses. Okay, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to the heavyweight fight here.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A massive manhunt in Texas is over. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. An escaped prisoner who may have killed a family of 5 yesterday died in a shootout with police in Texas last night. The gun battle broke out after police spotted Gonzalo Lopez driving the dead family's stolen vehicle late last night about 200 miles south of San Antonio.
No law enforcement officers were struck. It's my understanding he fired several rounds at officers and was armed with an AR-15 and a pistol, and I believe multiple officers engaged Lopez, ultimately shooting and killing him.
Jason Clark with the State Department of Criminal Justice. Lopez escaped from a prison bus last month, and since then, law enforcement officers, hundreds of them, have been using police dogs, helicopters, and every possible method they could to find him. Well, Lopez was armed with an AR-15 rifle, an assault weapon President Biden wants Congress to ban, and is something he pushed for during his primetime speech last night.
How many more innocent American lives must be taken before we say enough? Enough.
The president renewed his call for an assault weapons ban and limits on high-capacity magazines. He proposed stronger background and mental health checks and warned lawmakers if they fail to act, a majority of Americans will.
I believe the majority of you will act to turn your outrage into making this issue central to your vote.
President Biden spoke as a bipartisan group of senators are believed to be making progress on compromise measures intended to win bipartisan support. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Republican Congressman Greg Steube with this reaction on Fox News.
Joe Biden just talked about you have to have a trigger lock. So when the person is breaking into your home, make sure you have your key next to you to get your trigger lock off your gun and respond appropriately.
America's listening to Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Queen Elizabeth plans to sit out part of her own Jubilee.
At 96 years old, you can imagine it has to be pretty tough to withstand these long hours of celebrating and standing. And due to discomfort she felt during the Trooping of the Colors, she is going to be taking a break from celebrating in the coming days. Now, she won't attend the national service of Thanksgiving on Friday, but she did go to the beacon lighting ceremony Thursday night. She's recently experienced mobility issues and finds it difficult to stand for those long periods of time. So the Queen did look like she enjoyed the Trooping of the Color, though, today on the balcony of Buckingham Palace with the rest of the royals, though.
Fox's Ashley Strohmeyer. Tensions ramping up in northern Syria, where residents are bracing for a new fight. With the world's attention focused on the war in Ukraine, Turkish President Erdogan says he's planning a major military operation to push back Syrian Kurdish fighters and create a long sought-after buffer zone in the border area. And a robot taxi service gets the green light in San Francisco.
State regulators have given permission to the company to begin charging passengers for driverless rides. The decision will make Cruise, a firm controlled by General Motors, the first fully driverless ride-hailing service in California. It will initially transport passengers in less congested parts of the city late at night. Google spinoff Waymo has been offering a robotic taxi service in the Phoenix area since October 2020. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
And the winner of this year's Scripps National Spelling Bee is 14-year-old Harini Logan from San Antonio, Texas. She defeated Vikram Raju in the Bee's first ever lightning round tiebreaker. She correctly spelled 21 words to beat him by 6, and she takes home a trophy and more than $50,000 in cash and prizes. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
Subway's Eat Fresh Refresh does it again, bringing back a classic fan favorite on the menu. The roast beef returns. And not just any roast beef, it's choice Angus roast beef, flavorful and satisfying on its own, or layered with oven-roasted turkey and Black Forest ham in the Subway Club. Whether you're a choice Angus roast beef purist or like the variety of the Subway Club, both come piled high on hearty multi-grain bread with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Get your fill of the new roast beef at Subway. Eat fresh.
The 2022 GSPN Boys Volleyball All-Star Game presented by the Guam Army National Guard goes down Sunday, June 12th at the FD Phoenix Center. The best high school players from both the public and private schools will put their talents on display, coached by the champion coaches. Watch it live at the Phoenix Center or streaming on GuamSportsNetwork.com, powered by IT&E. The 2022 GSPN Boys Volleyball All-Star Game, June 12th.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Okay, so here we are back in the boxing ring with the heavyweight championship title on the line tonight between Ron McNinch and, what's his name, Mendiola?
Mark Mendiola.
Mark Mendiola, yeah. the Manila Mauler versus the Tamuning Tiger. Yeah, so I left off here. It does not remove the board from making the final decision. It just narrows down the field to ensure that we get the best candidate with as much input from internal and external stakeholders. Whenever I read that, I'm wondering, am I at Ruth Chris? Or, you know, we used to have a restaurant here on the island called the Sizzler. Remember that? Yeah. I guess that's what they mean by stakeholders. These guys standing around with pieces of raw meat, right? Yeah. So then McNinch McNinch expressed his dismay that not all board members were given the option to sit on the board. I don't care if you have one of these special boards that violates the Open Government Act, so long as I can sit on that board, McNinch said. Quote, I would have felt better if you had asked me, McNinch said. In turn, Mendiola said, I would have felt better if you didn't send the letter to the media without consulting me about a special meeting on the transgender issue. But you went and did that. How do you spell tit for tat?
Kids.
Yeah, come on, boys. Break it up now. Break it up. You're going to be friends. 2 hours, you're going to be best friends again. Oh, wait a minute. Then McNinch said, if you happen to be near my house, make sure you don't step off the sidewalk because my lawn is private property and you're not welcome. The board discussed, but didn't take a stance on whether a transgender girl rugby player would be allowed in competitions with GDOE school teams. This has been covered somewhat extensively in the Pacific Island Times and on Tall Tales under the heading of Rugby Boy. And it's once again a fine example of how you change the vocabulary, you change the way people think about things. As an example, going to this rugby deal, if I said to you, there's going to be a girls' rugby game this week, will you think it would be fair if one of the rugby teams has a boy playing on it against the girls? The answer would be not no, it'd be hell no. But how about if I phrase the question like this? The girls' rugby game is this Saturday. Would you think it would be okay if one of the teams had a transgender playing against the girls? Oh, yeah, we have to be inclusive. Yeah, it's just a game. And it warps the whole thought process. And that's what I wrote about in Pacific Island Times. Okay, after Mendiola said that, here's McNinch's response, quote, wow, that hurt. Wow, that hurt, McNinch responded. But in reality, I think all members should have been afforded the opportunity to respectfully serve on this committee. Mendiola went ahead and appointed the following members to the special committee: Mary Okada, Felicita Angel, or Angel, maybe she pronounced it, Maria Gutierrez, Tim Fedinko, Grace De La Cruz, Bob Steffi, Yoichi Rengil, Snow White, three of the dwarfs.
Now it's just a short board.
One of whom declined the appointment. The appointments were approved by GEB members with the exception of McNinch. All in favor? Aye, 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 aye. All opposed? Nay. The board will review the timeline the special committee develops at the next GEB meeting. Once the timeline is set, the search for the superintendent is expected to move quickly. Now, as is my usual custom, I kind of cheated here, Jose. And I went to the law. And if you go to 5 GCA 80104, Section 8104, you'll find the definitional section. And here's what it says. Public agency includes any board, commission, or comparable unit of government, any of whose members are elected, appointed by the governor, or appointed by the legislature, any nonprofit corporation created by one or more public agencies, the legislature, etc., the membership of the bowling team at Roy Lanes. Let's see. Was it formed? Any board, commission, or committee or other body which officers of a public agency serve in their official capacities as members and which is supported in whole or in part by funds provided by such agency, whether such board, commission, or committee or other body is organized and operated by such local agency or by a private corporation. So Section 8104A1 is broad enough to pick up the baby board. But then we go to 8104A2. Public agency also includes any advisory commission, advisory committee, or advisory body of a public agency created by law, resolution, or any similar formal action of a public agency. The open government law applies. So, Mark Mendiola, you don't have to give a 7-day notice and a 2-day notice for the meeting and include the agenda in the meeting if you don't want to comply with the open government law. And of course, you're going to have to publish that. And if you do it wrong, guess what? You'll hear about it on your favorite radio program.
And thanks to his telegraphing, we can know what's going to happen.
Exactly. We'll have our eyes peeled for it, right? Yeah, I may even have to do some sunshine law requests. So you can't get around it. Now, obviously, that's what the law says. And my disappointment arises not because of this blatant ignorance of the law, but by the fact that a public official, a board member, would think it would be okay to violate the open government law if it's easier, if it streamlines the process. I want to see folks in public positions who take the opposite approach. I don't know if the open government law applies, but let's comply with it anyhow. It's our job to keep the public informed. Let's comply with the open government law.
That's called teetering on the brink of corruption right there.
It is.
It really is, because if he's that close to being okay with circumnavigating the law.
Yeah, just not the kind of thing you want to see on your resume, Mark Mendiola. Not the thing you want people to say about you if you're going to run for re-election. So it's a really sad chapter here all the way around. And there's an easy solution to it. I could tell you exactly how you could do this, comply with the law, and be able to plan ahead in such a manner that you can move rapidly. But I'm not going to do it because I lost faith in you, Mark Mendiola. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do anything to make it easier for you. I'm going to do exactly the opposite. Unless you're exactly on top of the open government law, I'm going to be on you like white on rice. So the heavyweight in this particular bout, I think that McNinch, Mendiola tried to win with the knockout. You know, the crack about, I would have liked it if you had, if you hadn't sent that letter to the media. That was his right cross that he thought was going to was going to lay McNinch out, rechristen McNinch from Ron McNinch to his boxing name of the Canvasback Kid, because McNinch should be lying flat on his back in the ring. But McNinch was able to counter. So I think the boat goes to McNinch on points. But I'll certainly be looking forward to the rematch. The odds on the rematch are going to go way, way out of sight. Okay, so much for that. I got somebody in the green room here, probably Ron McNinch, who calls from time to time. Another Joe, suggestions for new superintendent qualifications. Let's see, I'll help you here, Another Joe. New superintendent qualifications. Must have experience refereeing boxing matches.
Oh, I thought you were going to say experience dating on Tinder.
Experience what?
Dating on Tinder. Okay, Bob, I called to ask, perhaps the special committee, or what do they call it, should before they make any decisions on candidates, they should consult with Bob Klitzkie at Tall Tales. They should write that into the small fine print.
Another
affordable.
Joe, it's really hard for me to argue with someone who seems to be so well informed.
Yeah, we don't want anyone woke and confused any more than,
Absolutely.
Telling the boys the girls can be boys in third grade.
Yeah, like
third grade.
Yeah, like Fernandez himself was coming out as being woke just at the end of his term.
I used to watch Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks. I thought that was funny. This is not so much funny.
No.
And the other thing, Bob, is perhaps whoever they choose as superintendent, should they write into the contract that they must not fraternize with 18 or 19-year-olds who are still in the Guam DOE system?
Yeah.
I would think it's obvious, but maybe not so much. Maybe they should write into the contract.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay, Uncle Bob, thanks for your time. I'll keep listening.
All right, good talking to you, another Joe.
Wait, was that an issue before?
What?
Fraternizing with those that are still students? I don't know. I just want to be clear that he wasn't making an accusation.
I think Fernandez has a reputation of being well liked by the students because he tweets and he goes out of his way to stay. And I'd see that as a good thing. Although nowadays it's really dangerous to befriend children if you're not related to them or something like that, because the accusations fly so fast and
and it's not because you're doing anything. It's just because it's the relationship on the surface. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, let's see who wants to get in. Hey, it's Ron McNinch. Wow. Okay. Ron, what kind of boxing gloves do you use?
Hey, half a day, Senator, half a day, Tom. I don't use gloves. Actually, I'm a bare knuckles guy.
Okay.
Yeah, but I like Mark Mendiola personally a lot. I just disagree about that the committee did not have to follow the open government law, and I think that it needs to follow the open government law, and that's why I volunteered to be on it. I said, and I said, hey, if I'm on it, I'll make sure it follows it. I mean, I'm big about following the law, and there was just a disagreement. He didn't, or some of the, I guess the other parts of the board didn't believe that it needed to follow it, but I do believe this committee or subcommittee does need to follow it.
Absolutely. I just went through it chapter and verse, Ron. There's just no question about it.
And the other part that I was a little bit concerned about, Senator, was they're going to have all of the members sign some kind of confidentiality agreement or something related to the things said or whatever, which I also was a bit uncomfortable with, because this is a public agency with a public board, and I'm just not sure, all of the details exactly of what they were talking about, but I didn't like the idea of that. I thought that.
I'm just going to butt in and say that's a dumb idea, because, I'm sitting here listening to it, and the first thing that pops in my mind, what are they trying to cover up? What are they trying to hide? Whose cousin have they got lined up already?
Right. And I do believe, and this is a rare instance where I get to say this, my doctoral dissertation was about hiring people. And, that's what my doctorate was in. It was in public position hiring. And it's something I know a lot about, and it's something I would have liked to have given them some of my input on. And that was, another little part of it. But, I think the main thing that I was a bit concerned about was, just that the committee was not going to, it was just that the committee did not feel that this group needed to meet under the open government law. And, and I had to speak up, and I wasn't trying to be, how some people can be kind of mean at these meetings. I wasn't trying to be obstinate or mean. I was just very uncomfortable with them not following the requirements.
Well, if you were listening, you heard me say that it's very concerning that regardless of what the law requires, that people on public boards would think that they should not be should not make their meetings public. I want people to have the opposite slant on it. That even if it's not required, let's follow the open government law. The public needs to know what we're doing.
Right. Like Tall Tales, those board meetings, since I've been on it, have been streamed live on Facebook. They've been openly accessed by the public. They've been properly noticed. And the staff over at G2E usually do a pretty good job about noticing our meetings and things like that. I just, I would prefer that this subcommittee operate similarly and simply follow those open concepts.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and I think one other thing is I've known Mark for many years, and this is probably one of the few times I've really disagreed pretty strongly with him on, and I think we both would acknowledge that this was one of those instances, and I have to say, all else equal, I thought we were going into that room yesterday to simply take the law and craft a simple announcement for the superintendent based on what the statute says, which includes a lot of elements that are required. They're not permissive in what we're supposed to ask for in a superintendent. And that's what I thought we were doing yesterday. I didn't really have an idea that there was going to be some kind of separate, activity level below the board for this process.
Yeah, well, I don't think that the Department of Education needs a star chamber in which to choose its next director or next superintendent, Ron.
Yeah, it did feel a bit like that. I know that the people that they appointed are all good people. I think I know all of them personally. I just wish that we could have been and I hope that I think all members of the board that I know do want to follow the open government law and strive, but I think that there was just a misstep in this particular case. And I do like your play-by-play action. I think you'd be a great sports announcer also.
Okay. Well, yeah, maybe that'll be my next career, Ron. Thanks again. Always good to talk to you.
Yeah, very good, sir. Thank you.
So long. Yeah. All right, so the end of the match. And now it's time for the seventh inning stretch at Wrigley Field.
Kings Guam World Tennis Tour, presented by GTA, is bringing international tennis back to Guam. 4 weeks of international play will swing into action with 2 weeks of juniors, followed by 2 weeks of pros, May the 15th through June 12th. The Guam National Tennis Federation will host world-ranked players who will be coming to Guam from all over the world. Netters will compete for ranking points and cash to improve their position among the world's best. Matches will be played daily at the Guam National Tennis Center in Harmon, starting May 15th through June 12th. Special thanks to our platinum sponsors, Dimension Systems, New Gen, American Medical Center, and Morico Equipment.
We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
So here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, where they play baseball. No boxing matches at Wrigley If there were boxing matches at Wrigley, I would probably want to be the ringside announcer. But it's not to be. Next item on the card is Bavakwa versus the United Nations. And I think Jesse must have telepathic capability because he called in just now, just when I'm going to Bavakwa versus the United Nations, and he wants to pick up our discussion on political status. So great timing, Jesse. I don't know how you did it, but congratulations.
Yeah, you know, maybe a sixth sense or something. But in any case, I just wanted to pick up from yesterday and just say, you know, I just feel that the insert cases, I agree with Weir that it needs to be, you know, basically go in the direction that he wants it to go in.
So and, you're giving up on self-determination then?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I'm approaching this is that, you know, if they do that, I mean, at the end of the day, we haven't even had we might not even ever get the self-determination.
Well, if Downs is overruled, you'll never get there because it'll be a legal impossibility.
Right. But what I'm saying is it already feels that way. It's been 120-some years since we've, you know, so unless there's light at the end of the tunnel, I mean, in my lifetime, then shoot, go for it. But I just don't feel it's going to ever happen. And I think we need to settle this once and for all because it just causes so much confusion and we just need to get out of this perpetual state of just being a colony or possession of the United States. And all the territories need to, because, you know, if we're, like I said, if we're all Americans, you know, let's go that direction, and that's what people obviously that's what a lot of people want. They want statehood. They want to be, but the U.S. is just not. They don't want to give the territories that they don't want to afford them.
Well, I've said it so many times. Statehood is a possibility for Puerto Rico, and I think that may very well happen. Because Puerto Rico has the wherewithal to become a state. It's got enough people. It's got other things going for it. 154,000 people can't become a state, Jesse. It's not in the card.
Right, but you know, there's 3 million people, and they've already tried to become a state, and the Congress is, and then now we're seeing that they might do it, but then again, that's just. You know, this could just be another thing for the elections coming up. So I don't know. I mean, you know, just
it's a pretty select club, Jesse. You know,
there's 3 million people, and they still won't let it become a state. So I mean, that's pretty bad already. You know, if that doesn't tell you something, then.
Well,
you know.
what tells me something is that we have to define our terms. You know, you toss the word "they" around very easily. Has the delegate for Puerto Rico introduced a bill into the Congress to provide for an enabling act? If the answer is no, then it's not they, it's him or her, excuse me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a process that has to be followed. It's not automatic. The war with Mexico ended in 1849. New Mexico and Arizona didn't become states until 1912. Took a long time. So it's not an automatic, and no one from Guam, none of our representatives has ever introduced an enabling act in Congress. No one from Guam has ever introduced a bill like the Tidings-McDuffie Act that would provide for Guam to become independent. So nobody, you know, it's kind of like you don't get what you don't ask for, and we haven't even asked for those things.
That's why I'm surprised that the other night why Lou didn't say something like that when she said that Mike hasn't, the delegate hasn't really done anything on the political status. If it's anything, he should have did exactly what you're saying to do, you know, and that maybe that would have really put some, how do you say it, some beef on the plate, you know what I mean? And
yeah, it would, and that's why he's there. So, you know, to use a broad brush and say, well, they haven't done this or that or the other thing, doesn't shed much light. Doesn't shed much light on what we're talking about.
You know, at the end of the day, it's going to take them, the Congress, the House of Reps, and the Senate. So the leaders of those people need to come together and say, come on, can we get this figured out? I mean, this is embarrassing. There's millions of Americans that don't have proper representation, and we need to either, you know, like you said, clear it up and let's fix this once and for all. It's a stain. To me, it's a stain, and it's you know, I want to be able to have proper representation in the Senate and the House.
You're not going to get, if the insular cases are overruled, you're not going to get that, Jesse. That's the point.
We're going to go to the path of statehood, though. If you're incorporated, then that's going to eventually lead you into statehood, though. You know what I mean?
Wrong. It doesn't.
Well, it did for Hawaii, though.
Well,
you know.
but Hawaii has people. Hawaii has resources, etc. You know, there's still one incorporated territory under the American flag. Did you know that? Palmyra.
Yeah, Palmyra, but that's like, you know.
Do you think that Palmyra is going to become a state someday?
Yeah, but how many people are in Palmyra?
None.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So there's people
So being an incorporated territory doesn't ipso facto become a state. It's more complicated than that. So let me lay it out for you really clearly, Jesse. If Downs is overruled, then Guam becomes an integral part of the United States. It's no longer, you know, owned by the United States, but not of the United States. It becomes the United States with all of the burdens that come with that, including the tax burden, the tariff burden, and all of the things that I keep talking about. But none of the advantages of statehood. You're not going to get to vote for, you're not going to have representation in the House. You're not going to get to vote for president. You're just going to wind up paying through the nose. And you're not going to have, your self-determination committee just got to fold up its tent, because there can't be any self-determination once Article 4, Section 3 is abrogated by the incorporation of Guam into the United States. Is that what you want?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, and that's what I'm trying to say is that is a stain for me. If Congress and allows this to happen and become, you know, and we're incorporated territory, it doesn't remove the fact that there's still people. There's more than 3 million, almost 4 million Americans living. Well, if Guam becomes it, there'll be 100-some thousand Americans living, and you know, not having proper representation, and that's embarrassing, and that's really,
so,
you know.
So you want to increase your embarrassment? Then is that it? You get a charge out of being embarrassed? I'm having a hard time figuring this out.
We've lived with shame by being, you know, a sovereign. We've lived in shame all this time by getting conquered by Spain and being.
I'm going to correct your pronouns again, Jesse. You used they a little broadly before. Now you're using we a little broadly. If you are ashamed of something, you are ashamed of something. I'm not.
Right.
I'm very happy living here.
Okay, there's a lot of people then instead of we. Then there's a lot of people
that are ashamed.
Yeah. Maybe not you, but there's, you know, or maybe not others, but there's still some others out there, you know.
Well,
it's shameful that we're in this situation, you know, and it needs to be corrected, because I mean, it's like somebody come into your house and took over your place and just gave it to somebody else, and you're just still there, like, whoa, dude. You weren't even supposed to be here in the first place. Like, who am I supposed to turn to? You know what I mean?
I don't buy your analogy. I understand.
Well, I'll get into it more on another thing, but you know, it's just that's why I said this whole. I can't talk about this whole thing in a short time, but there's just so much that goes into the whole discussion on the political status and independence and state, you know. But
we started out.
We
started out talking about the insular cases, and my analysis here on the show is that there are only two actual alternatives for the island of Guam. One is to continue on as we are, make such improvements as are available. Two is to petition the United States for Guam to become independent. There's nothing else, so it's one or the other. So if you're ashamed and you don't like it and you feel so bad about it, then independence is the only game for you, Jesse.
Well, yeah, like I said, I just hope this whole thing gets resolved, And,
well, that it won't get resolved by overruling the insular cases, because if Downs is overruled, the United States would not be able to dispose of Guam.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that if this thing goes through, that's just what we're going to have to accept. I mean, do we have a? I mean, do I have a choice, or does anyone on Guam have a choice if this goes through? I mean, we're at the mercy of the Congress. So,
well, with respect to Downs, we're at the mercy of the court, of the Supreme Court, not the Congress.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, right. But Congress does control what happens in the territory. So, and at the end of the day, that's what.
Only if Downs is not overruled.
Okay. Well, I guess we have to hope if I'm supposed to be for independence, then I have to hope that it doesn't get overruled. Right?
If you are for independence, yeah, you keep your fingers crossed that it's not overruled.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll see, and like I said, I'm for either. I mean, I just hope that this whole thing gets settled, and I think it's time, to do it. So, whatever way, and maybe that's what's destined to happen, for the island and for the people that live here, so, yeah. Hopefully the debate keeps continuing, and hopefully, for some, they're going to want this thing to be resolved and go the way Weir wants it, and there's some that aren't. So let the debate continue, I guess, or
well,
the really either way, yeah.
The really good news is that we have tall tales where we can talk about these things, Jesse.
Yeah, that's good. That's good though, because a lot of people, it's important stuff like you pointed out.
Okay, Jesse. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Have a good weekend. Okay.
Yeah, good weekend, man. No tall tales. I had a caller. Did he get impatient and hang up?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about how many people are ashamed. I think this was a person also from this island.
Yeah.
And so this is Jesse's call is important because it illustrates why hucksters like Neil Weir ought to keep their mouth shut, because they introduce a false premise and then go with it, and it snowballs, and everyone gets a part of it, and now nobody knows what's truth and what isn't truth anymore.
Exactly. It's a manipulation of words to manipulate the thought process. Exactly. Okay, so let me get the time straight here. I got a caller here. Johnny, Utah. Good afternoon, Johnny, Utah. Good afternoon, Johnny, Utah. What happened here? I thought I had Johnny.
I just have a root.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Johnny.
I just got a real quick question. What's the difference between the Foraker Act and the Organic Act?
The Foraker Act, it was an act of Congress, and it was the Organic Act for Puerto Rico. It was sponsored by somebody named Foraker, but it was the Organic Act for Puerto Rico. It set up the government, and just like our Organic Act.
So they're synonymous.
Yeah.
It means the same thing.
So it was what they called the Organic Act for Puerto Rico at the time.
Okay, and then so and I'm looking at I'm reading on here, and then the Jones-Shaffer Act that superseded the Puerto Rican Organic Act. Then
could have very well.
Okay, and then one other thing that I wanted to comment on was Puerto Rico. They had a really turbulent time right before COVID-19 in 2019. They overthrew their elected governor. It's a very unstable government that they have there. They're not ready for statehood. I don't foresee them as being put into a place where they can have a responsibility of being a state.
Are you talking about Puerto Rico or New York?
Both. even with Guam's fallacies and issues, I think Guam is more uncorrupt and legitimate than Puerto Rico
or New York, for that matter.
Or New York. Yeah. I just was. That's all I was going to say. This is like, I just was asking. I've been reading up on these different acts that apply to the territories, and the Organic Act and the Full Acre Act. I keep reading them, and they interchange the names, and I'm like, okay, which one are they? Which are they? Two different things? Are they the same thing? What are they? Which one are they talking about here?
Yeah.
So, you answered my question.
Okay, Johnny. Good talking to you.
Yep. You too.
Johnny Utah chimes in again. So let's head for Churchill Downs, and then I'll come back to Bavacqua versus the United Nations.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Okay, so here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, the home stretch. 6 more furlongs, and I'll be crossing the finish line into no man's land. The never state of the weekend. No tall tales, no tailgaters. Well, I'll suffer through it. Next item on the card, Bavacqua versus the United Nations. This is his Friday column. And the title, Bavacqua, the UN's role in Guam's quest for decolonization. Now, I got to start right at the headline. Bavacqua, of course, doesn't write the headline. Somebody at the Daily News does, who doesn't pay attention. Because Guam is not seeking decolonization. I wrote a column for the Pacific Island Times. Who is trying to decolonize Guam? Answer, nobody. There is no effort to decolonize the island of Guam. I'll repeat that. There is no effort to decolonize the island of Guam. Well, yeah, but what about the Commission on Self-Determination? Well, that's it. That's about Chamorros. That's not about the island of Guam. It's about the political status that the Chamorros want. Now, want for what? I'm not sure, because it's not spelled out. So, is it political status efforts of the Commission on Self-Determination? Let's have a vote, and let's see what the Chamorros want, and then when they decide what they want, we'll pack them up and move them to a reservation in Arizona, and they can do exactly that. Now, that's facetious, of course, but how do you deal with some of the people living on the island and their choice for political status when they aren't even the majority of the folks that live on the island? Hard question to answer. So this whole decolonization thing, to me, is a will-o'-the-wisp. It works out really nice for guys like Bavacqua and Melvin Wanpat, who get to go to off-island conferences in St. Lucia and places like that, stay in five-star hotels, eat good meals, play the role, pontificate, etc., come back and, be recognized as heroes in some quarters. Effective? Not at all. Because what they're after is not defined. Now, if what they really want is for Guam to be decolonized, subject to the rule of only Chamorros, that's what they need to ask for. But that's not what they're asking for. They're just saying Chamorros need to get to decide what they want. Then after they decide what they want, what happens? Well, at least they got to decide. It's like my analogy. Jose, I'm going to take you over to McDonald's, and we're going to have lunch there. You could have T-bone steak. You could have Peking duck. Or let's see, what else could we get for you? Maybe egg foo young at McDonald's. And so we go over there, and you find out that none of those things are actually available in the restaurant. But I say, yeah, but you still get to make your choice. You still get to decide what you want, right? And that's where we are right now. And, Jesse, I think the guy's heart is pure. I think he's very sincere. I think he takes this very seriously, but the exposure to the likes of Bavacqua and Neil Weir and some of these other folks, unless you really sit down and work through it and have some contact with somebody who knows what the hell's going on, you're bound to be misled. But here's Bavacqua's column. I spend a few columns every year writing about the United Nations in hopes of raising awareness about its role in Guam's continuing quest for decolonization. Guam's continuing? No. There is no Guam's quest for decolonization.
Nope.
The UN plays a limited but nonetheless crucial part in places like Guam that have yet to be decolonized. Unfortunately, in island media and on social media, there's a fair amount of misinformation or misconceptions about the UN. What it is and what it isn't, or what it is or isn't supposed to do for territories like Guam. The UN is sometimes portrayed as an evil, corrupt, international, regional, regime that seeks to take over countries. Only when there's any kind of a health emergency do they want to do that. Yeah. Sometimes it's a bloated, useless bureaucracy that's sucking money and resources away from the U.S. That's for sure. I don't remember the figure, but the United States pays more than half the expenses of the United Nations. Sadly, too often these depictions of the UN are just aimed at protecting Guam's current status as a U.S. possession.
Really? That was the conclusion of those descriptions?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, even if you're accurate, that's the purpose. It's one of those things where, yeah, what you say is the truth, but you still shouldn't say it.
You said that just because you don't want me to drive a Mercedes.
Exactly.
Nothing to do with anything you said, but...
Yeah. They don't have much to do with Guam, but just seek to insulate the U.S. from international criticism or interference. Yeah, the United States is criticized for a lot of things. I don't think it's criticized for the governance of Guam. I suspect it's in the other way. Anyone who reads up on what's happened here since we've been stricken with COVID, $2 billion. What a colonizer we have. It's important as we think about our place in the world and in relation to the U.S. that we have an accurate understanding about the UN as well. The UN is meant to symbolize the possibility for a better world. Oh, my goodness. I take it back. I take back every bad thing I've ever said about the United Nations. I just didn't realize that the UN is meant to symbolize the possibility for a better world. But like all things, it has limitations. It can be corrupt. It can be stagnant. It is a massive bureaucracy, and like all bureaucracies, it can one day appear to be oppressive and pointless. One day? How about every day? The problem with some of the depictions that I mentioned earlier is that they act as if the UN is a separate body hovering over the world. Many of the things that make the UN so frustrating are reflections of the world itself. While the UN may represent the hope for something better, it is nonetheless made up of close to 200 countries in the world. And so its imperfections, its pettiness, its pointlessness. Are we talking about the UN or the school board? Represents the world as much as they do the UN. This is why describing UN as some oppressive institution makes little to no sense. The UN's role is to suggest, to guide, to remind, all based on principles of human advancement. It isn't some global government. It has scarcely little power to actually compel any nation to do anything. It was founded on principles and rights that have been deemed to be universal and offer space for resolution of conflict, hopefully without violence. The UN exists to try to resist the worst in humanity and occasionally bring out the best. But it can only do so if the nations of the world choose to act for a greater good. The problem is they usually don't. Usually nations act in their own self-interest. What a horrible world, huh?
I'm still trying to get over the hump that he just turned a logical fallacy into a column.
Yeah, right. This is especially true for the most powerful countries such as China, Russia, and others who are reluctant to set aside their narrow national interests. In the case of Guam, the UN reminds the U.S. and other countries regularly in the 20th century a global consensus was formed that colonialism should be eradicated from the world and that all colonies should be assisted in moving toward genuine self-government. This is not some minor concern. This is key to Guam's place or lack thereof in the world today. The question remains, however, if the UN's role is to guide and remind, what is the value in traveling there to testify or speak out? I already know the answer to that one. He says he'll discuss that in next week's column. Okay, we're getting up pretty close here to the finish line at Churchill Downs, and I've got our Keith who wants to chime in with the Daily Snark. A regular feature of the program, sports fans, our Keith and the Daily Snark.
Yes. I haven't really anything substantive, but listening to what you just read, first I'm wondering if you can recommend an emetic.
Yeah, an anti-emetic. Yeah, I've
anti-emetic. Yeah,
I've often felt the need for that. Yeah,
that was truly amazing. Recommend that maybe you should develop a theme song for Mr. Bevilacqua involving some sort of weepy violins or something along those lines.
Yeah. How about wait till the sun shines, Nelly?
One of the things that I state as a defining trait of the left, and this is as good an example as one's going to find, is a childlike grasp of human nature. How can anyone actually believe? I mean, he can't believe what he just wrote, right?
Right. Well, he has an impact, and once again, I present you Jesse, and there are probably more than a few Jessies out there that think he really knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, no, we don't view the UN as an oppressive NGO or extra governmental agency. We just view it as a useless waste of money.
That's true.
Most people I know. But anyway, I just find the whole thing funny. That was a good chuckle to end my day, and I do appreciate it.
Okay, well, we're going to kind of put you on the calendar here at the end of the show. R. Keith's, let's see, what did you characterize it? R. Keith's Daily Snark. So we're going to be depending on you, R. Keith. see you Monday at 5:59. So,
see you then.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, so here's my Daily Snark. See you guys on Monday, and let's go, Brandon!
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
An escaped Texas killer dies in a shootout. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. A massive 3-week manhunt for an escaped prisoner ended last night about 200 miles south of San Antonio as police caught up with Gonzalo Lopez, and he opened fire.
My understanding that it did happen in a residential area, that after crashing, I believe, into a tree, Lopez exited out of the vehicle, only made it a short amount of distance before he decided to engage officers.
Jason Clark with the State Department of Criminal Justice. Lopez escaped from a prison bus last month and was the prime suspect in yesterday's killing of a Houston area family of 5. President Biden made an impassioned plea last night for Congress to take action to reduce gun violence.
Why in God's name should an ordinary citizen be able to purchase an assault weapon that holds 30-round magazines, that let mass shooters fire hundreds of bullets in a matter of minutes?
The president taking his message to the nation during a primetime speech.
If Congress won't pass an assault weapons ban, President Biden says,
we must at least raise the age to be able to purchase one to 21.
The president grew emotional, referencing last week's elementary school shooting in Texas and recent mass shootings in Oklahoma and New York.
There are too many other schools, too many other everyday places that have become killing fields.
At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The House Judiciary Committee approved a broad package of gun safety measures yesterday, and while the proposals may pass in the House, they have a slim chance of getting through with Republican support in the Senate. And a tropical storm watch is up for parts of Florida, Cuba, and the Bahamas as a tropical system is forming in the Gulf. America's listening to Fox News.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcast.